I'm really having to resist the urge to put this sound into everything. Regardless of what you might be thinking, you still need to stay at home. You should still be calling your elderly relatives regularly, and yes, you should still be doing all of your home learning. Use the link in the description or the link on ePraise to get the quiz done. And the answers come up straight away, which is great. Be aware, if your answer is pretty much the right answer, but perhaps with a slight misspelling, that's absolutely fine. Just make a note of the spelling and make sure you get it right next time. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, some feedback. So just a quick look at a couple of pages from Kai's book. There's a 3-marker down in the corner that we've done. There was a model answer, which Kai's used to green pen that answer, which is great. But just generally, the time, the effort that's going into the geography on this page is good, and something we should all be aspiring to. So having looked very broadly at general river landscapes over the last couple of lessons, today we're going to move on. We're going to look at river processes, sometimes known as fluvial processes. So rivers shape the land in 3 ways. Firstly, erosion, as symbolised here by the digger. Erosion is when material is removed from the bed and the banks by the flow of the water. Secondly, transportation, as shown here by the bulldozer, when that eroded material that's been removed from the bed and the banks is then carried away by the flow of the water. And finally, as shown by the dumper truck, deposition, when that eroded material which has been carried away via transportation is then placed down again, further downstream by the flow of the water. So rewatch the previous section if need be, and then match the key terms to their definitions. And here's the green pen. Wouldn't want to miss that because Christos will be chasing me again. So having looked at the 3 fluvial processes that are taking place along a river, erosion, transportation and deposition, we're now going to focus on 4 separate processes of erosion: hydraulic action, abrasion, attrition and solution. So to begin with, hydraulic action. This is when the force of the water wears away the bed and the banks, and in particular when the flow of the water gets into cracks in the bed and the bank, compresses air within those cracks, and that exerts force on the bed and the bank around it, which causes the bed and the bank to start to break away. Secondly, abrasion. When material is broken away from the bed and the banks and is carried along in the river, that material then wears away the bed and the banks still further. Essentially, the material, sometimes called the bed load, within the river scrapes against the bed and the banks like sandpaper, wearing it away even more. Material that's been eroded away from the bed and the banks and is carried along in the flow of the river will often collide, and when that material collides, it will break into smaller pieces. When material breaks into smaller pieces within the flow of the river, this is known as attrition. Finally, we have solution. All river water is slightly acidic, and that means that it's got the potential to dissolve soluble material. Not all rock types which the river flows over will contain huge amounts of soluble material, but some rocks, such as limestone, contain higher levels of calcium carbonate, and the acid in the water will dissolve the calcium carbonate, weakening the rock and causing the rock to break down and erode. Okay, so you may need to listen back through the 4 definitions 2 or 3 times to get this into your head, and that's absolutely fine. But once you've done it and you feel confident and comfortable with it, see if you can copy and complete this table and fill it in as best you can. And here are your green pen answers for you to check against. It's likely that you could well have some additional detail beyond what's on here, but this is a good basic level to aim for to begin with. So a quick recap. A river flows from the source to the mouth, and the river is split into three sections, the upper, the middle and the lower course. As we flow down the river, we find that the valley and the channel change. In the upper course, the valley is very steep-sided and V-shaped. The channel is very narrow and very shallow and has large amounts of bed load in it, large amounts of material in it. By the time we reach the middle course, the valley has become more of a U shape, is more gently sloping, and the channel has got wider and deeper. The bed load is still there and obvious in the river, but it's started to break down into smaller pieces due to attrition. And then finally, in the lower course, the valley is a wide, open, gently sloping U shape. The channel is much wider and much deeper, and any material carried in the river has been broken down into really fine sediment by that process of attrition. Now, the reason for these changes, particularly in valley shape as we progress from the source down to the mouth and through the upper, the middle and the lower course, is because of a shift from vertical erosion, where the water is eroding down into the valley, to lateral erosion, where the river is eroding sideways across the valley and making the valley and the river channel wider. The reason that you get more vertical erosion and therefore narrow V-shaped valleys in the upper course is because the river doesn't have a huge amount of energy, and all of that energy is eroding downwards, eroding vertically. By the time you reach the middle and the lower course, the river has got so much bigger, the volume of the river is so much bigger, and the river has so much more energy that it can now use more of that energy to erode laterally, to erode sideways, making the valley wider and making the river channel much wider as well. So to finish, a couple of exam questions to go through. First one, distinguish between the processes of abrasion and attrition. 2 marks, so therefore 2 minutes. Have a go. And now we have model answer. This one was taken from the mark scheme from when this question was set a few years back. Yours is likely to be similar. There might be some variation in language, but that's absolutely fine. So the model answer says, abrasion occurs when load, pebbles or stones carried by the river, hits against the bed and the bank, eroding them, whilst attrition involves the pebbles knocking against each other, making them smaller and smoother. And then finally, a quick 3-mark matching exercise. River channels are affected by different erosion processes. Draw a line to link each of the statements to the correct erosion process. Perfectly happy for you on this one, because in an exam you just draw quick lines with a ruler to match up A, B, C and D to the correct statement 1, 2, 3 or 4. And here are your answers. You've got lines drawn on and you've got the answers down at the bottom there, A3, B4, C2, D1. Homework answers for quizzes 1 and 2 are on ePraise. We'll set some more homework tomorrow based on fluvial processes. Make sure you get in